you want to remember that phrase, beautiful phrase, so beautifully sung by our choir. God, you raised me up to more than I can be. Maybe we'll recall that at some time throughout this week when we most need it. God raises us up to more than we might be in and of ourselves. What a beautiful thought and beautifully done. We want to begin taking a look in the Scriptures for a number of weeks at some of what we would know as the miracles of Jesus. Now, keep in mind, and we'll say more about this from week to week to week, that the miracles of Jesus are there throughout all of the Gospels, not just as something of a wonder, something of an amazing work that catches attention and causes us to say, ooh, and wow, but they always have some purpose behind them as well. In fact, it's right and proper that we would reverence those works of Jesus for that, for indeed they are amazing and they catch our attention. But always they are intended to show us something more about who Jesus is, about the very heart of God, about our relationship with God, about what we're called to do. And so they teach us and prompt us and challenge us beyond just the wow factor. And that's certainly true in the miracle that we would look at this morning. For John himself, in his second chapter, tells us that this was the very first of Jesus' signs, he calls them. Not miracles so much as signs pointing to something deeper. This is the first, and it's intended to show us something of who Jesus is and what unfolds in the rest of John's Gospel. So keep that in mind as we look through these miracles of Jesus, for they do indeed wow us, but even more importantly, they teach us and shape us and lead us deeper into our faith relationship with God. So let's look at the first of these this week. It's in John chapter 2, the Gospel of John. And it is near the beginning, or at the beginning. We might even say prior to the beginning of Jesus inaugurating his public ministry. And it follows what are referred to as the silent years of Jesus. We know something from the other Gospels of his childhood and of his beginning, and even a story from his adolescence. But there's a long period of silence, and we don't really know what is happening in Jesus' life. But here he comes on the scene as a young man, but an adult. And we find him interacting with not only his mother Mary, but others of his family, and now something of a public setting as his ministry begins. Chapter 2 of John. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they remained there a few days. Think, if you would, about a splendid wedding that you've been to. No doubt you have been to many. If you think about that event, I'm sure it was replete with many things. I'm sure it was a great time of seeing friends and family. I'm sure it was a memorable time of great joy. Perhaps there was entertainment. No doubt there was food and feasting, as we might say. But even if it was a great event with all of those elements, it probably paled, all of our such events probably paled in comparison to the types of wedding celebrations that Jesus and his family and all of those in first century Palestine knew. It was simply because this was an opportunity for folks to gather from far and wide like no other. And it was customary for a feast to not just last a few hours or one evening, but to be extended out for up to 7 days. Can you imagine? Relatives and friends coming. This was the feast of a lifetime. All other celebrations in Jewish life and the course of one's life might pale in comparison to the time and effort and resources that went into this. Now, it was customary in Jesus' time for there to be an engagement that was something different than engagements as we know them. In our day and time, engagements might be something of an intention, but we're not quite sure until that final act of marriage takes place. But in Jesus' day and time, that simply wasn't the case. It was the engagement that was the legal and moral and social beginning of this new household. That was a serious matter. And so when someone was betrothed, it was a done deal. Families were connected. The bride and groom were considered to be married, though they weren't together quite yet. And at any time throughout a subsequent period, the bridegroom and his family might decide now is the time.